Kyle Larson pulls off one of the most dominant performances in the history of NASCAR, and 4 drivers have been eliminated from this year's playoffs. Let's break down NASCAR's Bristol Night Race. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's break down this year's Bristol Night Race where 4 drivers say goodbye to their championship hopes in 2024. One of those drivers for the rest of their career, while Kyle Larson pulls off an absolutely dominating performance, one of the most dominating performances we've seen by a Hendrick Motorsports driver or any NASCAR driver throughout the history of this sport. Let's get into it. We'll break down the top 10, look at the playoff grid going into the next race, we'll look at those 4 drivers eliminated. Let's break down everything that happened at a fairly calm Bristol Night Race. You know, in the older generation race car, we saw a lot of action, a lot of drama at the Bristol Motor Speedway. This was the craziest racetrack, a lot of people's favorite racetrack, personally my favorite racetrack before going into the next gen era. Now that we've entered the next gen era, this racetrack has definitely changed. We've seen a switch. This is more of a tame race. You go to last year, Denny Hamlin led a majority of the final laps, no cautions throughout a majority of the race. Same thing tonight, over I want to say it was over 100 laps of a green flag run, which is certainly interesting compared to what we had before this car, which was the exact opposite, more chaos, and then maybe some more tame races, other tracks that have now also switched to be more wild. So just interesting how that happens. But in the end, it was a Kyle Larson show, right? Kyle Larson qualified up front, qualified in the second position, I believe, going into the race, was able to get by Alex Bowman for the lead early on. Bowman ended up going back to finish in the 9th position, the pole sitter. But Kyle Larson was obviously the fastest car all night long, dominated, led 462 of those 500 laps. Also, that is the most laps led ever by a Hendrick Motorsports driver in a single race. You can go back to a few other instances. Jeff Gordon, I believe, at Martinsville. You could go back to when he led all 400 laps at Dover, and then I believe that was in the 90s, Jeff Gordon. But this was the most laps ever led by a Hendrick Motorsports driver in a single event. This is also the most laps led by a single driver since the next gen era, so since 2022 moving forward. So in the next gen era of race cars and NASCAR, tonight was the most dominant performance lap-wise that we've ever seen. It also only took 2 hours and 37 minutes and I think like 50 seconds. So 2 hours and 38 minutes to complete the 500 scheduled laps at Bristol. That has to be one of the quickest Bristol races ever as well. Which is certainly interesting. He was able to dominate quickly, lead all the laps, and he's now adds 5 playoff points with that in the next round of the playoffs. You got to remember, these points are cumulative. They move into each round. The ones that you gain per round move to the next round. So he has a big advantage now going to the next round of the playoffs. We'll take a look at that. Let's break down the top 10 just real quick because it's interesting. Mostly made of playoff drivers. I believe it's 7 of the top 10 are in the playoffs. Chase Elliott, nice second place finish for him. Had a lot of speed, but had nothing for Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson was 6 seconds ahead of him, but Elliott was certainly a solid car all night long. Was sort of working his way through the field. He got up to second and then just couldn't really do much from there because Larson was so dominant. But a nice second place run for Chase Elliott, boost of momentum going into the next round. Elliott only has 1 win this year at Texas, but he's also been super consistent, so that makes it confusing on where to put him at in my predictions for how far in the playoffs he could go, right? Could he make it to the Final Four because he's been so consistent, or not because he doesn't win, right? I mean, it's going to be hard to win a championship without winning the race and winning multiple races throughout the playoffs. So that's rare that we see that. I think Kyle Busch did it a couple times without winning the playoffs, but anyway, Bubba Wallace, nice run for him. Not in the playoffs, but was able to salvage a solid 3rd place finish tonight. Was able to run very well. Was able to get by his owner a couple of times. Nice run for Bubba Wallace. After the disappointment of missing the playoffs a few weeks ago. Denny Hamlin, obviously Bubba Wallace's team owner, finishes in the 4th position, which is just enough, just what he needed to advance to the next round of the playoffs. I think he could have got a top 10, but Denny Hamlin, after disastrous first 2 races, has a nice 4th place finish tonight. Looked like he was the fastest, could have been like one driver that could have got up there and battled Kyle Larson, but just never really found enough speed to go do it, right? I mean, just couldn't quite get there to have a chance to get the clean air and race for it. And then obviously Larson at the very end, last stage or so, last half of the race, it was just on another level. But at the very beginning, looked like Denny Hamlin was that 2nd place car trying to catch Kyle Larson, which is certainly interesting. Hamlin had a disastrous first 2 races of the playoffs. Good night tonight. Be interesting to see what he does next week when we go to Kansas, which is a racetrack he's won at recently and really favors the Toyota. So Denny Hamlin, sort of a sigh of relief after tonight. Made it through the next round. Can this team advance moving forward? Christopher Bell, 5th place finish tonight. Just sort of stayed in the top 5 all night long, and he got up to 3rd. I think he was in 2nd. He sort of just shuffled around. There was passing. There was some shuffling around mid-pack or in the top 10. Just nothing for the lead whatsoever. Ryan Blaney, nice sixth-place finish. Ryan Preece, also a solid top 10 for him, going out this year in that 41 Ford. This is the last year for that racing team, SHR. So a nice top 10 for them at Bristol. And Ryan Preece has had a lot of success at short tracks recently. I go to Martinsville multiple times since he's been in the Cup Series. I go to Bristol. I go to tonight. He's had some success by finishing the top 10, which is better than his other racetracks. Chase Briscoe advances once again. Had a good playoff first round. Went in as I believe the last seed, but was able to run well at Atlanta, run well last week. At Watkins Glen, decent at the road course, and then run great today for his standards to finish in the top 10, right? That gets him into the next round, So certainly that's an advantage. He's also seeded last. He's seeded 12th going to the next round. We'll take a look at that in just a bit. Alex Bowman, nice run for him finishing ninth. He was on the pole. We were expecting to see a little more out of him, but a ninth place finish, that's solid. We'll see what he can do moving forward. Ross Chastain, not in the playoffs, but able to get in the top 10, who's another driver that's sort of had a rough year, so top 10 is certainly a slight confidence booster, if nothing else. Doesn't hurt as bad as his season has been so far. Let's take a look at the drivers eliminated tonight before we look at round two's playoff grid, right? The drivers eliminated from the playoffs after tonight: Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Harrison Burton. So we'll start out with Ty Gibbs, right? Ty Gibbs, really unfortunate for him, just wasn't able to get back up through the field, got a pit road penalty midway through the race, and that's really what took him out of contention. Section 9, where the racetracks, you're turning on pit road, and pit road is timed. They're not checking your pit road speed, right? This isn't checking you to see if you go over the speed limit. It's a timed section. So if you go lower in the curve, you could beat the time, and that would pin you for speeding. You go higher, you could go faster, but you'd have to be taking a longer route. So it's all about managing the amount of time you spend in each pit zone, in each pit section, and make sure you don't beat the time that NASCAR has set. And that's really the name of the game. That eliminated Ty Gibbs tonight. I think he ended up, being out by 12 points or something. Could not get to Daniel Suarez because of that issue, and it was obviously very difficult to pass tonight with how even the cars were. Tires weren't really wearing. Same incident for Martin Truex Jr., except it's more heartbreaking because this is his final year. He's had a lot of woulda, shoulda, coulda races all season long. He went to Richmond earlier this year. In the spring on Easter. Really frustrating year all around for Truex. This is his final season, and he was running in the second position. Did not look like he had a chance to get the win. Larson, once again, on a whole other planet. But really unfortunate because it looked like he was going to finish second, was going to squeeze into the next round of the NASCAR playoffs and have a chance to race for a championship. His final season, go out with a NASCAR championship. And I've said all year long that this is a driver that can win a championship. He's got the speed. He's got the driver talent. He's one of the most talented drivers in the history of NASCAR. I still think that's true, and it's unfortunate that a pit road speeding penalty in Section 9 takes him out of playoff contention. It's his fault. It's his mistake, but it's just unfortunate that this year has not been great. A lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda for Martin Truex Jr. I go back to a few, mistakes on his part. I go back to that Richmond race where he got beat by Denny Hamlin in late race caution. Just really frustrating year all around for the 19 team. I hate that he will no longer, I'll never see him again racing in the NASCAR playoffs, and that's sort of, I still have to accept that because I've been watching him since I was a little kid, right? Brad Keselowski, obviously eliminated as well. Really disappointing run. I thought the RFK Fords were going to be fast tonight. They won here in 2022. They were fast here last year. They're fast in the spring. The RFK Fords, Chris Buescher, who's not in the playoffs, Brad Keselowski, who's not in the playoffs anymore, have run very good at Bristol Motor Speedway since the new car came out. Even that first year when they were having a god-awful year, they ran decent. It was their best track. And they won that race in 2022, Buescher did. To run as bad as he did tonight is just shocking. There's a big gap. Either everyone just really gained on him or they might have lost something. Not sure entirely what happened, but Brad Keselowski eliminated, was running outside the top 20, top 25 all night long. That's not going to get you through in the NASCAR playoffs with those few bonus points he had going in. Harrison Burton, I think it's good Harrison Burton made it in the playoffs from the win at Daytona. It's really good for that team, the Wood Brothers team, but just the situation he was in, 36th in points or something when he got that win to shoot himself up into the playoffs. It's a great story, but nobody expected him to move on to the next round, and that didn't happen. Just that team has not had enough speed, and Harrison Burton's made a lot of mistakes himself too. So certainly we'll have to see what Harrison Burton can find moving forward. Had a mechanical failure midway through the race. He was already 30-something points out, had a mechanical failure, power steering failure, halfway through the race, essentially completely eliminating him from the playoffs. I think he missed it by 50-something points. So just unfortunate for Harrison Burton, but that's not, surprising to see. Let's take a look at the drivers that made it in, right? This is the playoff grid going into round two of the playoffs. You have Kyle Larson is now the number 1 seeded driver going in this round, 39 points above the cut line. That's a big advantage. We'll have to see if he can keep it. Christopher Bell, 24 points above, also a nice advantage for him. Tyler Reddick, 20 in, who's been really fast at all variety types of racetracks. He won at Talladega earlier in the spring, which we do race in Talladega in this upcoming round. William Byron, 14 points in. A little shaky for William Byron. Had a solid run tonight, but I'm still nervous for him moving forward. I thought, throughout the midsummer, maybe they were saving a little bit for the playoffs, but I just have not seen that boost that they had at the beginning of the year, which is a very strange common theme. And I brought it up on the show a few times that Byron's really fast at the beginning of the year and then dwindles and is not as fast at the end of the year, with the exception of some key moments last year, like Texas, like Phoenix. It's certainly strange. Ryan Blaney, 11 points in. So this is where it really gets close, right? Is, fourth on back. It's still close. Tyler Reddick has an issue early on or late in a race, which could potentially put him on or below the cut line. Same thing with Bell. The only driver that has a really good cushion is Kyle Larson, but it still could be lost with a bad race or a couple of bad races. Once again, you have Denny Hamlin only in by 7. I keep thinking of Denny Hamlin as a driver that's lost so many points. With the penalty from TRD, whatever happened there, where they lost 10 bonus points from that per round, net 30-something points potentially. Really frustrating for Denny Hamlin, only 7 points in entering that round. We'll have to see how he can perform at those racetracks. Kansas, where he's won at before, the Roval, and then Talladega, of course, as well. Chase Elliott, 6 points in. Joey Logano, 4 in. Centric, 4 out. Suarez, 6 out. So Suarez was able to advance into this round, which is sort of unexpected, but he's able to do it. Was really fast. Suarez was really fast at Atlanta and last week in Watkins Glen. And really, at Atlanta was the key moment where he was able to get 19 stage points and finish decent in Watkins Glen, and then advance today after running 30th most of the day. I think he finished 32nd. So terrible day for Daniel Suarez at Bristol, but was able to advance because of how well he ran in those first 2 races and the stage points, which is key. And we'll keep monitoring that moving forward. It'll only get more important, right, as we get through the playoffs. Alex Bowman, 7 points below. Chase Briscoe, once again, the last seeded driver at 12th. But it's so close, right? I mean, it's so close from really just 2nd to 12th. So much could shake up with small mistakes, small accidents, pit road penalties. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Crashes that could take out multiple drivers. We'll have to keep an eye on that moving forward. Next week, we do go to Kansas. That should be a great race. It's been really good the last few years. Had the closest finish in NASCAR history last spring, or this spring, just a few months ago, back in May. So it should be exciting in the playoffs. Everyone's going to be in it. The pressure is on, and it should be good. That's really it. That's all there is to talk about following NASCAR's Bristol night race, and of course, about Kyle Busch, once again, finishing multiple laps down. Let's get rowdy.